Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Growth Unlock Hiding in Plain Sight Synergy between paid influencer marketing and strategy. My name is Ariel Berlinski. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Movement, giving you a pulse on all things going on throughout this constantly pivoting industry, what we're up to at Movement, and speak with our top experts about it all. Today, we're pulling back the curtain with our agency's paid media and influencer marketing leads on how we collaborate, what makes our process unique, and how we help brands stand out across social. So I would love it if each of you could introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about what you do at Movement, how long you've been with us, and naming a client or a project that you've loved getting to work on since hopping on board.
Yeah, so happy to be here. I'm Vanessa. I'm a senior influencer marketing manager here at Movement. I've been here for the last 5 years, and it's been awesome to work on some things like Intuit, which we built out a creator program and launched their first ever brand trip, which has been my favorite thing I've touched on so far, and it just feels so rewarding.
Amazing.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. I am Joseph, Associate Director for Paid Media here at Movement. I've been with Movement for about 5 years. I've had the privilege of working with several different clients across multiple different industries. I really can't pick a favorite, but I think the most rewarding part, again, is like Ariel said, is our unique approach and how we make sure we find those synergies between the influencer, creator content, organic strategy, and also paid to have a successful like vision on social. And also making sure that we define like what that looks like for all of our clients and having a really strong impact in that area is why I've been so excited to be here at Movement and excited to talk with everyone today.
I'm Carissa. Happy Friday, everyone. I'm also an associate director of paid media. Over the course of 4 years, I've worked across various accounts from taxes to food and bev. And most of my time has been on Amazon Fresh, which has been probably my favorite account because they just really valued testing and expansion, which has just made my job so much more fun. So we've always continued learning, growing, and delivering results.
Thank y'all so much. Okay, so let's dive right in. Now, Vanessa, I want to pick your brain first and discuss, a lot of elements, right? We have where UGC and creators and content strategy actually meet and work together to make magic. But I feel as though when brands say they want UGC or creator content, what do they often get wrong, and how do we approach it differently here at Movement?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I feel like what brands kind of so-called get wrong within this like creator content mind space is that they kind of treat creators like just like talent and just have them go over, briefs that are just fully scripted, already having a tone and voice that feels like the brand. And I think, the value of creators that they bring like their own viewpoints and their voices to their pieces of content. It makes them unique, stand out. And so I think leveraging their beauty and talent in that way is awesome. And I think brands, shouldn't want every piece of content to look the same. They can really leverage creator content to feed into different personalities, archetypes, and things like that while still hitting that key message. And I think for like UGC, it definitely has its place. It works really well for established product driven brands, like thinking like beauty, fashion, because it's just easier to source and can help fill up a content calendar. A lot of brands that we work with sometimes just don't have that visibility, or we're not a product first kind of brand. So it's kind of hard to go out in the wild and look for UGC content and fill up our calendar. So yeah, I think the real opportunity here is for creators looking to them as partners, right? Like leaning into their creativity, their storytelling, and kind of like writing that brief with that approach in mind. And I think that's what we do so well here at Movement, is that we look at that kind of lens and where we approach creator programs with two main goals. One, to really diversify our organic feed whether that be like sourcing different kind of influencers in different niches. So like for Amazon Fresh, right? It's grocery, but like how can we tap into more like skits and fun things like that and breaking out of like the ordinary pillars of the brand? And that's worked really well for us. Yeah, that's been a great way. And as well as intentionally sourcing creators and just looking for that distinct style and having different tones and voices for the creator content that's being posted. So yeah, at the end of the day, just looking to use creator content to spice up the variety and authenticity of creator content because that actually drives performance.
That you shared that. And I think it's such a real honor and privilege when a brand gets to work with a creator because they know the ins and outs of their audiences and where their passions lie and things that they're fascinated with. So there's no better person to define what that storytelling approach should be than the creator themselves. And it takes a lot of trust. And it's beautiful that you work, with our clients to bring that to fruition. And I want to know how should brands be thinking about creator content differently today than they were even, let's say, a year ago?
Yeah, for sure. I feel like before, like, influencer marketing, creator marketing, there's a lot of just spotlight on a big name. Of course, like when you have Super Bowls, things like that, like you'll want the flashy names. But for, temple like moments, I think in the past, you can kind of find more macro level, celebrity level influencers heading that campaign. And sometimes you don't really see this like built out ecosystem of creators that support that campaign and giving the campaign legs. So I think
Mhm.
now there's a larger fit and demand for ambassadorships, partnering with influencers and creators to build like a long lasting community, right? Because social media is like fun. It's fun to look at the comments. Like people are banding together. They're just like sharing their love for a certain brand or just looking for more. Yeah, I think now there's more opportunity to look into partnerships in more of that mid-tier micro level and creating that platform fit, leveraging format fluency and just trusting that these creators at all different levels, especially that mid-tier micro, like they really have an impact here and it's building that community for these brands.
Now, can you walk us through a recent example where you've had influencers or UGC that really unlocked something for a client and tell us what made it work?
Yeah, I love this. And I think, yeah, working with Carissa on Amazon Fresh, like this just was such a big win, especially for us last year. So we, had started testing out these so-called out of the box influencer partnerships because, yeah, like you mentioned, Ariel, like that gaining that trust of the client is so important. And we had, that great relationship with them and was able to test out a comedian Stephen Brower as a partnership back in like early 2024 and like everyone loved it internally, externally, like his comment section was blowing up and just like that one win was able to open up the eyes for Amazon Fresh and be like, okay, yeah, like let's take on this, bet and like keep going with it. And so how do you, yeah, really make this viral post, keep going and like being able to transform this into a so-called like work stream that's going to go on for the entire year. So that was really fun. And so in 2025, we were able to build out this whole full reactive work stream, which really, the goal of it was to focus on identifying social trends very early, moving very quickly, and also re-engaging those influencers who are already connecting with their audiences. And so this like repeatable kind of format, a way we were approaching finding new partners worked really well for us. Like we had 7 partners, 7 videos that really broke, I mean, like groundbreaking organic impressions. I'm like in the millions. So one of them had like 13 million organic impressions on Instagram Reels, which is just kind of crazy. So I think above all, like what really makes it work, it's truly a team, right? It's like our team identifying the right creators, the right trends, as well as the speed, right? How fast can we identify them? How fast can the client brand approve them as well, giving them the liberty of their creative vision with the brief. And yeah, just staying on track there and just month over month building that strong cadence and that has just been like such a big win for us on Amazon Fresh.
No, it's huge and very impressive. I want to unpack that further and have you share what really goes into creating that content that doesn't just blend in a case as being authentic, but actually breaks through and continues to resonate when you are amplifying it through paid over time.
Yeah, totally. I feel like the biggest misconception with this word, like authenticity, being authentic, like I think every brand knows that. Every influencer creator like has heard that through and through. And that's just kind of the baseline here. So I think like to break through that even more, like how do we go deeper is just really understanding and making sure that at the end of the day, the content is native to the influencer's feed, as well as just very intentional, which is working with the creative team, working with the paid team, like understanding like how do we blend these messaging, like creative messaging to get our points across that works effectively on organic and on paid. So really that thing comes down to that creative visual and audio hook. I know it's like a broken record, but that seems to be what works really well. And just kind of like going back to what we were talking about earlier on the question before, like for Stephen Brower, that like repeatable format is his creative hook and visual hook. And like it feels so native to his account. So people are watching just like, not really having that guard of like, this is hashtag ad.
Mhm.
So that's worked really well for us organically. And I'm sure, yeah, our paid experts will touch on it later. But yeah, it's just like mentioning, how do we get brand aware? If it's the goal of brand awareness, like how do we creatively get into that in the first 5 seconds in a creative way? And yeah, that's kind of like how we've approached it and how it's been working for us here at Movement in our partnerships.
Now, last but not least, what would you say are brands leaving on the table when creators, content, and paid operate in these silos? And how do you unlock that full potential when they're integrated from the start?
Yeah, this one, is just really comes down to alignment with the influencer team, paid team, which is why like love it here at Movement. Like we have it all in house here and I can just go directly to our paid experts and at the very forefront of the campaign be like, "Hey, like what do you guys need, wish? Like how can influencer creators like content best support their campaigns as well?" So that's like aligning on best practices because every platform has its best practices, as well as like the number of partners, like how many pieces of content are we hoping to look for, and so that they have a good understanding what's coming down in the pipeline, as well as down to those flight dates, like, with influencer creator marketing, like every 30 days, there's paid usage, organic usage. That's costs that we need to understand and like best negotiate upfront. And
Mhm.
yeah, so it's just kind of understanding all these little nuances and just having a quick chat with the team. And so it just doesn't feel like an afterthought where talent's already locked in, deliverables are already locked in, and it's like, oh, wait, like we can actually use this for paid. Like, that causes a bit of, some, like it's just not as streamlined. So I think, yeah, above all, like what brands are leaving out is just how do we get in a room with the influencer paid team well before the campaign needs to go live.
That's really well put. Thank you so much, Vanessa. So now let's take a little pivot into bringing campaigns to life with the paid world. Joseph, I'm going to pick your brain now. So once this content that the team has worked to build is officially live, that obviously really is just the beginning. So how does paid media take creator and UGC content and turn it into real performance with your team?
So that's an interesting question. I would first like to think about what Vanessa said earlier with like defining the goal of the content. Right? What content, what do you want it to do? What is the goal of this campaign? And how do we want to like best optimize? When looking at the content organically, how we pick winners and take paid and make it more impactful. One, looking at how is it interacting with our organic audience, right? Is it really driving a lot of engagements? Is there a strong view through rate? Are the engagement metrics really strong? Again, looking at historically, has this type of content performed well with us and our teams paid, campaign layout previously. And then lastly, I think the biggest piece, and I think Vanessa touched on it a little bit, was the authenticity, right? So I think I said this in the beginning of merging what we do with paid and organic, right? So oftentimes, if we work with a brand, they have a large following on social that encompasses a lot of different types of people from a lot of different backgrounds and a lot of different nuances. What paid can do is give it our content a lot more reach, and it allows us to be a little bit more specific, right? Sometimes we have to cut through the noise. We know organic feeds are very crowded. We may not always get the visibility we want with the organic content as well. So what we do is we use paid in order to hone in to the people that we know would really need to see this content and it would resonate with, and that would also do us the service of getting that content pushed a little bit more organically, right? People who are more likely to share that content, people who are more likely to engage with that content. That's what we look for on social when we're trying to push creator content and make it more impactful that way. Now, if the goal is to drive a little bit more sales and things like that, we may look at it a little different in terms of how we amplify that creator content. What's the messaging behind it and how we identify that winner, right? So just really depends on the goal of the client. But again, we want to look at how is it performing with the audience that we intended it to have, right? And can we use paid to reach more people with it? I think those are some of the biggest key pieces in terms of like how paid is technically used in movement to really, really, merge that organic influencer and paid strategy all together. Nothing's in a silo. We want to make sure that what we post organically can translate to a larger paid activation and to the masses as well. But the role of the paid team here is to make sure that we're reaching the right people with that content. So I think in short, we just want to make sure that we're amplifying the content to the right people and making sure we're picking our biggest and best content to go out.
That's so well put. And thank you for that deep dive. And I want to pick your brain on when your team is evaluating content for paid, what signals tell you this is clearly something that we need to scale?
Love this question too. Goes back again. Goal, right? What is our goal of that campaign? What are the metrics that tie back to that goal? Every larger goal has a key metric that we can attach to it to evaluate success. So the first thing we want to look at is, are we hitting that goal metric, right? With this piece of content. Is it outperforming that goal? And if it's outperforming that goal, we definitely want to scale that content. Another way we want to look at it is specific metrics, right? For specifically like a creator activation where we really want to drive that awareness, we might look at the hook rate. I call it the hook rate. It's how many people are watching that first 3 seconds of a video and how long are they staying. The next thing we want to look at is the video completion rate. What videos or what content is being viewed or engaged with the longest? That's telling us that there's an appetite for this content. We just need to get it in front of more people to really drive those metrics. When we're looking at things like direct response, driving traffic to site, more consideration or objectives, we really want to look at click-through rate. We also want to look at landing page views if we have things like that, and some of those tracking places mechanisms in place as well. But overall, we want to tie it back to the client's goal. I think overall at Movement, we've done a really great job of really honing in on what a client needs in order for their business to grow, but also show that it's social that's driving that as well, right? Are we seeing growth in our business while also seeing growth on social? So any content that is allowing us to, again, drive higher engagements and more efficiency, we want to scale that content because, again, that's overall going to be helpful for our accounts and the business moving forward.
Amazing. So, share a bit about how your team approaches testing, especially when working with, let's say, multiple creators or content variations.
Yes, interestingly enough, we look at testing here as always on approach, right? We always want to be iterating on what we did before and also testing new variables moving forward. I think a good example of this is activations that me and Carissa really worked on heavy in our early days on TikTok, where we would work with creators and we would test different types of content across products. This specifically is a good example of a setup of where we want to make sure that we isolate the variables. I think when we think about testing, you can do it a myriad of different ways, but the setup is key and the tagging is key and the variables are key. I think when we think about it here, those are the three pillars that we think about. These have to be airtight in order for us to get the results or look at and draw conclusions from anything that we've run. So, working with creators, setting up a standardized set of products that they're all using. So, again, that is our control. And then working with them on figuring out how to use their authentic voice and seeing where the differences are in those and figuring out what works or who works for what audience we're trying to drive or what product we're trying to sell. So again, I think the biggest part about how we look at it is tagging. We do a lot of dashboard work. We have a lot of robust tools that we use here. And the biggest key is tagging, making sure everything is named. There's a callback to every one of our assets. That's a callback to every ad set. That's a callback to every campaign. And that can all be tracked and sliced and diced throughout any dashboard we have because we make sure that the tracking is there. That we're able to have an always on testing approach. We can always pull out and extrapolate how did this perform versus something we did at a previous time, or how did this perform versus something we did last year? How did this perform versus last week? Again, looking at how we're making these changes and how it's impacting our overall total results. So, in short, again, we just want to make sure that our variables and our controls and our tagging is airtight to make sure that we can draw the conclusions we want to in order to again give Vanessa's team the insights that they need to let them know like, hey, this is what's working for creators and this is how we can take this and push it and scale it further because we saw X, Y, and Z. Here's the data and proof points to show that.
Absolutely. Because as you said, I mean, knowledge is power. And with that, you can make empowered decisions to move at a quicker trajectory to the right choices that lead to success. And with success, you've been doing a lot of exciting work with our clients on the paid side. So, can you speak to how paid strategy has really evolved since joining forces and what's been working?
Yes, I think this is a big one for me. I think when we look at a lot of our clients and how they viewed social specifically, yes, it's there to drive that conversation and drive that awareness. Also looking at it as a tool to help grow a business, right? We look at it oftentimes as a place where we interact, share funny videos and things like that. But we also all know that we are susceptible to buying products, being influenced by products and being influenced by services on the platform as well. So whether it be trying to get someone to watch a new TV show or maybe be tapped into our products, I think the biggest thing we've shown clients is one, you want to be able to show them the products or the things and services and sell it to them, but you also want to retain them. So I think the biggest shift is not just looking at social as a way to grow an audience, but grow that audience while also growing those business metrics at the same time. If we can have a successful page strategy, what that looks like is we're concentrating on driving whatever that business objective is. And at the same time, simultaneously, we're seeing growth on our social channels because we're picking the right content that feels right for social, while we're also picking the right content that feels right for driving that specific goal that our client is looking for.
Absolutely. And lastly, Joseph, how do you collaborate with the, creative and our influencer team to really give feedback that helps to improve the future content and not just performance?
Yes, I think we personally look at it as a combined and total team effort, right? So there's no point where we're not giving the teams that feedback in real time of what's working and why it's working, right? We do a really good job of making sure that the paid team here has a very good understanding of organic, and the organic teams have a great understanding of how pay works. That way, we know how to find those synergies between the two teams and understand how we can move forward and make one thing multiplied to five things by mirroring our organic strategy and our pay strategy together. Me and Vanessa have worked together many times on Intuit and done a lot of award-winning work that had to do with creators. And I think a lot of that was successful through building those building blocks, right? Doing one of those campaigns, understanding what works, having a full recap with those teams, and understanding what are those takeaways that we can use to influence the next campaign and how does that look? Making sure those conversations are had and we look and discuss as a group what we can do to impact performance moving forward. So sometimes we don't fall into some of the same pitfalls and also
Mhm.
things go a lot smoother. Because again, time is all money in this world that we work in. So again, delays that we can cut back on by implementing any learnings is very crucial to us having success here with our paid media specifically.
No, absolutely. And getting to hear that behind the curtain perspective, I think is so beneficial for everyone, whether, are a social media manager or you're a brand that just wants to understand how does it all happen. We throw around a lot of these terms and phrases all the time, but to hear it through your lens is really special. So thank you. And last, but of course, never least, we're going to be talking about the strategy of the behind the scenes work and really how insight fuels creative that performs. So, Carissa, from a strategy perspective, why would you say is it really important to think about creators, content, and paid as this giant ecosystem of one instead of being separate work streams?
Yeah, I think it's important to think of it as one ecosystem because each piece strengthens the other. So creators, generate the content and the content is giving us the signal on what's resonating. And then paid then is allowed to really scale those high performing assets efficiently to those broader audiences, kind of going back to Joseph's point about paid can have that expanded reach and we're hitting people that our organic can't hit. So when these work streams are connected, we're not guessing, we're using that real performance data to inform what we amplify. So ultimately, that's going to drive our better efficiency, our lowering our costs, and that's going to improve the overall results. So I feel like to kind of put that simply or to button that up, it's the creators fuel the content informs the paid, and then paid is able to scale what works.
Absolutely. And I know one term that's thrown around a lot across the internet and particularly in our industry is social first. So, what would you say social first looks like today when you're building plans that have to include both organic and paid from the jump?
Yeah. I kind of feel like everyone has their own version of what social first means, but I feel like to me, social first really does start kind of what Vanessa had mentioned way back in the beginning is that authenticity, but especially when you have to work within the guardrails of a brand and still getting creative of how we get that through, especially in today's time, audiences are really kind of craving those real voices and real experiences and content that feels human and not overly produced or manufactured, especially when AI kind of comes into the conversation and AI is not going anywhere. It's here to stay and it's only going to become more integrated in how we work, but it should never kind of replace those genuine perspectives or like those lived in experiences. So I think the most effective strategies are built from that truth. So partnering with creators that can really bring that credibility and get creative and developing content that feels native to the platforms and then using the paid to like really scale obviously what works. So the social first approach is not about like where the content is living, but is starting with the authentic storytelling and designing for both organic and paid. So just really working together from the very beginning on that.
100%. And can you share with us where bringing all these teams together early on has changed the outcome of a campaign that you've worked on?
Oh yeah. I think for all of us, we know that Q4 is a really, really big deal and planning for it ahead of Q4 is extremely important. So I think a really good example is the work that we did on Amazon Fresh gearing up for holiday season. We brought on our content creator team and paid teams together early on to really strategize what felt relevant for the holidays, but not overwhelming to the consumer. Q4 is notorious for a lot of deals, a lot of content. It's really, really heavily handed on holiday content specifically as well. So how can we kind of break through that noise and have our creative stand out in a very different way? And so our amazing creator team developed series of simple and fun recipes. And one of them being a Halloween themed like Rice Krispie treat. And it was a really huge success. And the content performed like exceptionally well. And it had the right balance of like an easy to make, a low lift, and just like a genuinely such an enjoyable piece of content, especially during a time that can feel stressful. So I feel like it offered a really approachable and fun thing to do with your friends or your family or even alone. It's just like wanting something that was very easy and fun. So that actually kind of became like a best practice for us and really leaning into that simple, relatable content that meets people where they are, especially during these high pressure moments like the holidays, which are overwhelming and crazy for everyone.
No, that's so fantastic. And it also makes me really want a Rice Krispie treat. So, how do you ensure that the insights from paid performance and creator content are actually shaping your future strategy in other meaningful ways?
Yeah, I think it really just comes down to consistent testing and those feedback loops, like what Joseph was saying. It's a circle. We have to keep moving. We're always looking at past performance to understand what worked, what didn't, and most importantly, like the why behind that. So from a paid perspective, we analyze the performance signals from creative to audience to the platform itself and feed those insights back into our teams to ensure that those biggest like kind of learnings from these are taken away and we're able to really iterate and reinforce what's working. So it's definitely not a like one size fits all approach. We're continuously testing, learning, and iterating. So we're always kind of driving those results.
Amazing. And looking ahead, fast forward, how do you see the relationship between creators and UGC and paid media evolving over, let's say, the next year? What have we been doing at the agency to really spearhead that?
Oh gosh, everything is moving so quickly. I mean, I definitely think that the relationship between creators, UGC, paid, all of that is only going to become more integrated. Trends are moving at lightning speed. It's so hard to keep up. And the brands that win are going to be the ones that are moving just as quickly. Movement specifically, we have what is called move fast. And that's the mindset where, creators, content, paid strategy, everyone is sequential. So everything is happening in parallel. So paid allows us to gather those real time performance signals and then quickly identify what's resonating so that we're rapidly iterating. And whether that comes to creative or shifting the strategy or scaling the new content, it's less about building one perfect asset and more about building a system that can test, learn, and evolve continuously.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Carissa. I think it's just such a wonderful approach and mentality in a space that, because it constantly pivots and it moves at the speed of lightning, for a lot, it can be overwhelming and intimidating. But to know that everyone comes together and says, hey, we're going to work in lockstep and we're going to move together and just, take on the adventure that is social and truly bring to life so much magic for the day to day for our clients in all the parts that we can control. And it's so cool to see everyone working together to bring these campaigns to life, and so much amazing content that takes over our feeds in the best of ways. And before I let everyone go, I always love to wrap up with one final question. So I would love, Carissa, if you could kick us off with this. What is one shift brands or creatives need to pay attention to right now if they want to stay relevant and actually win on social?
You have to stay creative. I think it's yes, there's a playbook and yes, like that works, like that's the tried and true. But the brands that really stand out, just they don't stop there. They test more, they push those boundaries and are bold enough to evolve beyond what's already proven. So I would say that's kind of my takeaway.
Absolutely. Vanessa, thoughts?
Yeah. 100% agree with what Carissa said. In terms of influencers, right? Like the beauty of working with influencers and creators is the range of voices and audiences they can bring to a brand. So, as a brand, we need to take some risks in order to break through the feed. Just carve out a small budget to test and learn because we love a test and learn, and you won't be able to, continue to push these boundaries if you don't test and be adventurous. And like we said, social media moves at lightning speed. So like if something flops, like it flops. We know it doesn't work. So let's try a new territory. And so with that too, like a win doesn't always have to mean going viral. Like that's just impossible to go viral with every piece of content. So setting those small wins and what can that look like? And that could be just simply as, reaching a new audience and resonating with them a lot more than what you were, say, like 6 months ago.
Absolutely. Joseph?
I think two things. Piggybacking off of what Chris and Vanessa said about creativity. The biggest thing here is you have to be the person that goes over the hill first. You cannot be the person that, they're telling you, hey, come over here. It looks good. Sometimes brands need to take that risk, right? They need to step out and just try to be that trendsetter. It may not work every time, but you'll never get it to work if you don't try at some point. So I think that's my first takeaway. But I think the second biggest one is probably the buzzword of the decade is I think it's really important that you critically think about how you integrate it into your agency work streams, right? And with your brand as well. Not just how to use it to create new assets or streamline work. That's all great and dandy. One, to stay agile. We have talked a lot about a feedback loop. Using AI to draw quick insights from some of those things I talked about earlier, like hook rates, video view through rates. It allows us to identify winners a lot faster, be a lot more efficient, and again, be that first person over that hill because we getting that information back quicker. And lastly, I think something that a lot of brands aren't thinking about is using AI to make sure that their brands are authenticated on social, right? I think we think about it just as how we can create things, but just as easily as we can create something, someone else can create something. And again, we don't always have all the guardrails in place right now through all the AI tools to authenticate what's coming from a brand or what someone else has created through using a brand image and likeness. So being able to use AI to set up those guardrails for our brands and protect us on social to make sure that users know what's ours and what's not. So I think those are the biggest takeaways for what I think is going to transform throughout the age of social over the next maybe 5 to 10 years with the AI push.
So incredibly put. Thank you to all three of you for joining me here today for this conversation. It was such a pleasure. I love getting my behind the scenes chats. It truly is a real honor. And I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. Catch us next time for our next panel chat, and we will talk soon.